I also do, artificial intelligence and machine learning. So kind of the sexy stuff.
Oh.
But
so when the robots take over, we should talk to you.
You can blame me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can blame you and come talk to you and how do we get out of this mess.
Exactly.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my next video. In today's video, we have a real treat. One of my oldest and best friends in the Nomad life is going to present today, my friend Brian. And I think you're going to really enjoy the video. Now, I know from past videos that a lot of you are out there wondering, oh, what's going on, Bob? Are you quitting? Are you sick? Are you dying? And my answer to that is no such luck on your part. At any rate, I am not going anywhere. However, I'm older and I would like to do less. And so my goal is to do less and less on the channel. And so I have been thinking about how to do that for years, actually now. Another question you're probably going to have is why Brian? Well, literally, Brian is one of my oldest and best friends in the nomadic life. I've known Brian for 11 years now, but I know Brian's heart. And Brian's heart is to love and care about people. That will always be the primary thrust of this channel. How can I help the nomad community? How can I help the individual who's suffering and needs hope? This channel is about offering hope. So I think the channel will change. It will be different, but its heart of caring and compassion will always be there. And let me tell you why I'm convinced that's true. When we started Homes on Wheels Alliance 3 years ago, we needed board members. So when I thought about who would be on the board of trustees, Brian was the very first person I thought of, and he is now still on the board. He is the treasurer of the board. He contributes his whole life and heart and soul to helping others through how the heart and soul of CheapRVLiving will not change. Brian's heart is to care and help people, to give hope, to give a way forward. That will never change on CheapRVLiving. In fact, I believe it will be enhanced by Brian being a part. I hope you will welcome him in and see that this is a step forward and not in any way, shape, or form a step backwards or even a step sideways. This is an improvement. We'll find out together. So let's watch the video.
Hello everyone and welcome to CheapRVLiving. My name is Brian Gifford and I'll be your host today. And for those of you new to the channel, we hope that you find this video informative and helpful. For those of you who've already been here before, thank you for your continued support. With that, let's just get right into it. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking to Keri, my good friend. Welcome, Keri.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So how long have you been on the road, Keri?
I have been on the road at least part-time for almost 4 years now.
Oh, very good. Okay. So, and what first inspired you to hit the road? Or how did you first hear about it?
I actually became familiar with the lifestyle in no small part because of the CheapRVLiving channel.
Perfect. Oh, didn't know that. All
yeah,
right.
well, Bob Wells did an interview with someone in a Toyota Dolphin several years ago when I was evaluating different rigs, and that one kind of hit home and inspired my first rig.
Oh, very good. And so what were you doing at the time that made you like, this is the lifestyle for me? Like what pushed you over the edge?
Well, it was actually good timing that I found it. So I was living in New York City, had been going through a period of my life of a lot of change. I was laid off from my first job. I had invested in work as a workaholic as I was going through a divorce, which is a very healthy coping strategy, let me have you know. And I'd left a position. I'm a PhD, so really just kind of a very, very high-performing person, going, checking the boxes, going through the phases of my life that I felt like I was expected to do. But at no point was I putting myself first or deciding or taking initiative or responsibility for what really made me happy.
Okay.
And so between the divorce and finishing my PhD and then again being laid off from my first real job out of the PhD program, I was fortunately given some severance and I stepped back and took 6 months off for the first time in about probably 7 years that I took a significant amount of time off and stayed with family. I was really privileged in that way and started deciding, well, what do I want to do? I always loved road trips. My dad lived in a trailer
Oh,
and
okay.
traveled around in the summers when I was a kid.
It runs in
And
the family.
it runs in the family. Yeah,
Perfect. Okay.
I had great role models in that way.
Excellent.
You know, he, you know, would maybe make $10,000 a year and would travel around, and so I could see exactly how little you needed to spend. Because remember, I was unemployed at the time,
Oh, yeah.
and so I had the severance money, which was enough for me to buy my first rig.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And so what was your first rig?
My first rig was a 1987 Toyota Dolphin with a 4-cylinder engine.
Oh, yes.
It was 22RE, and it was 22 feet long.
Oh, those things are so cool, though. I love those things.
Yeah, they're cool in theory.
In theory, yeah, okay, yeah, that's one of the reasons I didn't get one as well. So,
I bought my first rig when I was unemployed. I ended up needing to get a job at some point, and so I
okay.
found a job in San Francisco. I transitioned to a field where I could work remotely, because as a
Okay.
laboratory scientist, it's a little hard. You're kind of stuck in the lab. So I
Yeah.
transitioned into a tech role,
Okay.
and ended up doing about 3 weeks at a time. I was allowed to work remotely for that company, and so I would go for different road trips. So the Toyota Dolphin was great, except for the fact that it broke down about 5 times. Yeah.
In that amount, in the
Yeah,
amount of time.
in the year
Okay.
and a half that I had it. So that's,
Okay.
and so part timing was really to my benefit, because I was renting a space that I could park it, you know, that I could go back to while I was learning the ropes of being on the road, not only with my first rig that was constantly breaking down. It was actually funny. I probably spent $7,500 on the rig itself.
Okay.
It only had 23,000 miles on it. It was in beautiful shape. Someone had just redone the interior. It was
Yeah.
really beautiful, and I still love that rig to this day. But I put at least $7,500 into repairs.
So you're 15,000 into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to go full time, because
Okay.
you know, I got a taste of, you know, driving around.
The freedom.
The
and
bug,
oh,
yeah, right.
Totally.
And I was just like, okay, I definitely want to do this full time. But I was I was actually shopping for a casita or a scamp, but I was in California working full time in the summer. And even though I worked remotely, it was still kind of hard. You know, there'd be one in Sacramento, and by the time, you know, I'd see it on a Tuesday, and by the time Saturday rolled around, they would have sold it already.
Of course, yeah.
And so what I ended up doing was buying an A-liner, an A-frame, you know,
yeah.
a pop-up.
Yep.
You
And
know,
that's when I first met you. You
yes,
were in that. Yep.
exactly. And so
Okay.
there's pros and cons to that trailer, but it was actually not a bad first rig,
Okay.
but not great for a woman in particular to be full-time in.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, so I got one that was about a year old. It was in beautiful shape. I paid cash for it.
Okay.
It was easy to tow. It was 3,500 pounds.
Okay.
But as they age, and actually if they're stored folded down as opposed to just having them up, there's a lot of pressure on the springs. And even though mine had been garaged by the prior owner, and it was, and again, in beautiful shape, I never had any issues with it, the springs will fatigue, and they'll get, because they're compressed in this position.
Yeah.
So if you they had been stored like this for basically a year, and so it was, even though it was only a year and a half old when I bought it, it was increasingly difficult for me to lift it.
up.
And so the benefits of the travel trailer, or the pop-up trailer, I should say, basically a cardboard tent kind of, it was very spacious. I loved all the space. I had one with dormers that popped up, so it was incredibly easy to heat, incredibly easy to cool. It came with an air conditioner. It had a propane furnace. And so I learned a lot. I did my first solar install on it. It was a great first rig, but I would recommend it for, and I could tow it behind the vehicle I already had, which at the time was a 2012 Toyota Highlander. It also took a lot of time to set up, and I missed the flexibility of the Class C. It took me 5 minutes. I just had to make sure there wasn't anything on the counter, basically.
Right.
Unplugged any hookups, and then I could just drive off.
So now that brings us to your current setup, which is right behind us.
This is Calypso.
Calypso, excellent.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about Calypso.
So Calypso is my 2012 Mercedes Sprinter. She is a 170 wheelbase, which is the kind of medium wheelbase.
Okay.
Crew, which means that she comes with windows that were already installed.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I have done 2 different builds in her. I've done one build that I did myself, which...
Well, first up, how long have you been in this?
Oh, I've been in Calypso about 2.5 years now.
2.5 years, okay.
Yeah.
And so then you had your build 1.0.
Yeah.
And how long did that last before you went to 2.0?
About 6 months.
6 months. Oh, so you knew pretty quickly like it
Yeah,
wasn't working.
yeah. Well, you know, when you're driving down the road and your ceiling starts falling out, that's not a good sign. I mean, I wish I were joking, but
Yeah.
I mean, but
Fair enough.
I did everything in a family member's driveway. I did all the electrical still mine that I had done,
Okay.
but I'd done electrical on 2 prior rigs, and so I learned along the way.
You already had experience.
And I just did a progressively bigger system in each.
Okay.
And this one, basically, about 6 months in, I got to do kind of a partial. I mean, it was a full build. I could live in it,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to decide. I got to try what I wanted, and that's part of the reason I love
Cool.
having a van. Is it allows me to like redo it without too much trouble. Actually,
Okay.
I mean, it's not as easy. I mean, it's easier to demolish than say a Class C would be to
For sure.
redo it.
Yeah.
I hired someone to actually do it, and he was very talented guy. I found him on Craigslist. He was a former tiny home builder, actually.
Oh. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit. So you work from the road still. You're still a remote worker. And so tell us a little bit about that. How do you make that work?
So I am a data scientist,
Okay.
which basically means I apply my scientific training. I was effectively a computational biologist. I worked in genetics and a couple of other different related fields. And I applied those analytical skills to really big data problems at scale. I also do, you know, artificial intelligence and machine learning. So kind of the sexy stuff.
Oh.
But
So when the robots take over, we should talk to you.
you can blame me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can blame you and come talk to you and how do we get out of this mess?
Exactly. I
Right.
take full responsibility.
That's perfect. So, and then do you have a hard time being able to work remotely on the road?
No. I will say that I did take a job recently, the job before this that I won't mention here, but that, you know, even though I negotiated for a fully remote position, once the vaccination became available, and I was one of the people that was vaccinated prior to everyone else, because of the nature of the work I was doing, they would send me on trips, and so it ended up becoming 80%. So technically it was remote, but it wasn't. But what they were doing was they were having me travel on their time, and like what I prioritize now about this lifestyle is, you know, I work 80 or not 80, I work 40 hours a week, but or more depending on less depending on what's needed. But when I close my laptop, my time is my own, and so they were taking my personal time away from me.
Because you had to fly to get there, so you were away from your van and your dogs.
Yes, and the added expense of getting dog sitters.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. Even though I could technically fly out of anywhere, it was really difficult to find dog sitters that I trusted with my 2 animals.
Of course, yeah. Then that makes sense. So, what is one of the biggest challenges you found being on the road?
You know, it's kind of timely. We're in California, kind of in late summer. Climate change has actually been one of the most difficult things for me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, the summers are getting hotter.
True.
And the first couple summers I was in California, it was very smoky. It didn't really bother me that much because I traveled also in the winter. But now being full-time, the fire situation is really, really difficult because, for instance, I was planning to spend several weeks here. I've got friends that I want to see, but it's increasingly difficult to find places to stay because it's not like there's a fire in the particular place we are, but they have moved the fire resources to accommodate fires in other places that are not far from here, and, you know, to mitigate the risk. And so these, you know, although I've had a little bit of time to get prepared, when you work full time, that kind of instability it stresses me out because I need to be able to have good internet. I need to be able to make sure that the temperatures are okay. I mean, we're at what, 7,000 feet now or
Almost
so?
8,000, yeah.
8,000 feet, and it's beautiful. But everywhere else in the state that would be within like a probably 5-hour drive is going to be 101 this weekend. So you can't always chase 70 degrees because there's these last minute changes.
It's true. Absolutely, yeah. And you know, and with sometimes they do fire closures or forest closures, which makes it really difficult to find places to camp. And so if you're suddenly put in the position where you need to get out because, you know, you need internet, but you're forced to get out and you still have to work, that would make it, all right, I could see there where that's a huge challenge for you. Okay. So we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit here again. Have you ever felt in danger on the road?
No.
Okay.
As a solo woman, I traveled by myself for certainly a year and a half, 2 years part-time before I met up with a group called the Escapers.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, I also have a 100-pound Doberman who you guys will meet later.
That helps.
Named Keith. And so I certainly do have a greater sense of security having him there. You know, even though he's a sweetheart, he has a big bark.
He does.
But I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I felt threatened.
Okay.
I will say I've been in situations where I've arrived at a campsite and I thought, you know, just things like there might be needles on the ground, or there might be like what do you call it? Like broken glass or something on the ground, where you just kind of get a feeling like, well, maybe
this is a party area.
this is a place where people might get drunk. They come out on the weekends, and maybe I don't want to be here when they're
use
here.
your gut intuition for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
which I think is huge.
well, but also you can read reviews on campsites. And so
True.
I'm definitely a planner, but even iOverlander, Campendium, Free Roam is another one that I use more lately.
Yeah, freecampsites.net.
Freecampsites.net. Yeah, I use that a lot, certainly when I first got on the road.
Yep, likewise.
But read the reviews, not only for internet, but also because, you know, you want to be able to like make a phone call if there is an emergency.
True.
But more importantly, they'll help you understand kind of like what's the feel of a particular campsite.
That's true. And another nice thing about the van is that you can just hop in the thing and go. Like you can just turn the key. So you, with a trailer that you previously had, you would have to like go hook up. You would have all these things where you can just turn the key and vamonos. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I think that that's huge for safety concerns. And using your gut, I think, is always really smart.
And a big dog helps too.
Big dog helps too. So, so final question: do you have any sage pieces of advice that you could give to someone who is out there listening right now? They want to hit the road, but they haven't gone and made that step yet. What piece of advice can you give them?
Well, Keith has a lot to add here, but for me, I would say part-time. I had quite a learning curve. I learned a lot about my own vehicle, about my own travel style. What I really needed, I just bought a lot of extra stuff that I thought I needed, but I really didn't. And so part-timing makes it a lot easier for you to go out, test it out,
test drive,
figure out what you really need.
That makes sense.
And you're constantly going to be like turning stuff over. That's kind of the nature of living in a small space.
True.
But really learning about yourself, your rig, and having the comfort of not necessarily jumping right into it. Because a lot of people, I think, are lonely. I had a blast traveling by myself because it was so novel. And eventually it took me about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years before I really dove in and found people who just have the same amount of excitement for traveling that I do.
You found your community. You found your people.
Exactly. And there's a little less of a burden. You're not going to feel as lonely because I still had my community back in my sticks and bricks.
Sure. Thank you, Keri, so much for joining us today and sharing your story and your setup with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And thank you to all of you out there watching in on our video. We hope that this video was informative for you. So have you guys been in a rig and changed rigs? If so, what did you learn from the experience? What changes did you like? What changes were necessary? So leave your comments and questions below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and smash that thumbs up button. And until next time, so long and see you down the road. Bye, guys. Hi, Keri. Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Etc.
Yakety smackety.
Etc. Etc.
Yeah, and you know, my van is amazing, and you should absolutely live in a van.
There you go. Action. I still want to get one of those, like, action things. I'm going to be awfully close to you.
Ooh, Brian.
Hey, how are you doing?
How close of friends are we?
Hey. Okay. Welcome to CheapRVLiving. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay.
I do feel welcome. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to once again thank Keri for taking the time and chatting with us today. Be on the lookout for an upcoming video in which we will take a tour of Calypso, which is Keri's 2012 Mercedes Sprinter van. But until next time, so long and see you guys down the road.